Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rita Choi, founder of AsiaHRM. AsiaHRM is a professional community for human resources practitioners to help stay ahead of the curve, keep abreast of the latest HR information, trends, and best practices. And with the session today, we have to thank for the support, the Institute of Human Resource Professionals and HRFC, Human Resources and Finance Community, both are from Singapore. And for the topic today, the future work for HR. And I believe that is not something new to every one of you, right? Especially we are from HR. And you know what, when we talk about future HR, you all related to technologies, AI, and blockchain, and so forth and so forth. And today, we are very glad that we have invited a global influencer in this area, Mr. Adrian Tan. He's going to talk about this topic. Adrian is the strategist, future work, and HRP. And Adrian is going to talk to us more about HRP, okay? And he was a serial entrepreneur in the recruitment, career search, and HR consultancy space, leading to 2 HR Vendor of the Year awards, HRI, HR Entrepreneur Award, and Global Recruiters Best Marketing Award. And he is one of the top global influencers in HR tech by AIHR. Adrian writes extensively about the future work on his blog and is the creator of Singapore HR Tech Market Map. He also interviews future work enablers on his podcast. So without further ado, I would like to pass the control to Adrian so that he can share more on his topic, or he would like to talk about himself more, just feel free to do that. So Adrian, thank you.
Thanks, Rita. Yes, I love talking about myself more. So I'll spend the next 1 hour just talking about myself. Thank you so much, AsiaHRM, for organizing this. And hello to every one of you here. I am Adrian and I'm based in Singapore. So talking to you live right now from my bedroom. And because it is a Saturday afternoon, at least for me, and I believe for most of you, I will try to keep the lecture portion of this presentation as short as I can, so as to make time for discussion. I think that will make things more interesting and vibrant, to go through a discussion, to go through any form of dialogue or things that you may have in mind about the future of HR jobs. But in today's presentation, it's really, I would say, a summarization of what we have seen in an extensive research regarding the study on the impact of technology on HR jobs as well as the skills. But before that, let me just go through and share with you more about what my company do, which is IHRP. In short, if as I explained to Rita earlier on before this session, if you have heard of companies like Shroom or CIPD, we are Singapore equivalent of CIPD or Shroom. And what does that mean for those of you who are unfamiliar? So it all goes back to 2017 when MOM, or rather the Tripartite of HR Institute, launched in 2017. When it felt that there has to be a national HR professional certification framework. I was actually involved in that early discussion. I do recall it was managed by PwC as one of the key recommendations by the HR industry manpower plan. So in essence, it is just trying to put together a certification layer, just like what you would do for accountants. So for accountants out there, they will get their CPA. So think of us as the CPA for HR professionals. And in doing so, of course, trying to level up the entire sector, the entire function, and in hope to achieve a world-class level kind of HR professionals within Singapore. So some of the things that we do based on the strategic trust, of course, is on the recognition with the certification to help the company to grow as part of their strategic enabler. This is done through a product line, which we basically get people to administer a diagnostic tool. And most importantly, is put together this community, because for anyone that become a certified professional, they are part of this community. And we do recognize that we don't We are not the monopoly of fresh ideas or the best ideas and best practices when it comes to HR. It really comes through peer learning. So we are trying to drive that as well. So over and above the certification, we also require people to take on a continuous professional development, or CPD for short. So in essence, your cert is not with you for life. Every 3 years, you need to renew. And to renew, you need to clock certain number of hours, whether it is done through some training, attending our webinar, participate in our survey, etc. So all this will add up. We also have this thing called skill badges. As countries, companies are gravitating away from academic qualifications, the emphasis is more on skills. So the skill badge is our way to recognize HR professionals who has been there, done that when it comes to certain spectrum, but to also make it easier for companies to recognize that you had indeed done something like this. So that's on the individual side. On the company side, as I mentioned earlier on, the diagnostic toolkit, and we also have this corporate partner program where we welcome companies with open arms to come in to become a corporate partner so that they are able to make full use and leverage on certain discount benefits, and of course, trying to get them involved in other areas such as certification, the diagnostic tool, so on and so forth. And for myself, just to expound a bit more, I actually started my career in HR in 2004. It was quite accidental because I just got laid off in a couple of dot-coms. This was around 2002. And then 2003, I joined a company in the airlines industry. So they essentially distribute spare parts for airliners. I still remember I was in customer service. I was managing Korean Air. I was managing the airline in Taiwan. I was also managing CX, Cathay Pacific in Hong Kong. And I thought I was safe. Okay, no more .com nonsense. But then SARS came along. And because of that, people stopped flying. And because of that, I thought I might be facing my third consecutive retrenchment and score a hat trick in that. I was pretty worried. The MD held an emergency meeting telling us, oh, don't worry, everything is going to be okay. But 1 week later, he resigned. So that didn't exactly give me a lot of confidence. So I had a friend, I have a friend then, he was running his own business. And as someone who is young and naive and foolish, you don't overthink. I just see from the angle that, okay, if I'm my own boss, I wouldn't fire myself. So let's start my own business instead. So I rounded up a few friends and we started a recruitment business, something that we just thought of doing for fun for a couple of years, ended up to become a 12-year journey for myself. And towards the tail end of that journey, I actually co-written a career guidebook. The idea is to sell 1 million copies and retire. That didn't happen. But it became a calling card for us to do training. And that's how I got involved in career coaching. And also because the career coaching aspect was more of a one-man show, it also got me to do a lot of research and experimentation in productivity, which I am currently still sharing a lot on, especially with technology. Then I went into the outplacement business. I got involved in HR consultancy across different years. And ultimately, I joined a HR tech company 2 years ago. And that really came about because I was writing a lot on HR tech. And this came true because after I exited from my recruitment business, my first idea was to join LinkedIn because I wanted to deal with technology. And that didn't happen. I interviewed at hire.com, didn't happen as well. And I just basically expressed my interest in writing because I always enjoy writing. And the writing manifested into a HR tech market map, which I've done for about 4 to 5 different years. And things just snowballed from there. So 2 years ago, I was in India, just checking out a HR tech event, and someone recognized me. And I was invited to their booth and then to their office. They wanted to open an office in Singapore and wanted me to be their advisor. I instead joined them full time. And about 5 months ago, I joined IHRP in a new role. And I want to share this thing with everyone here because every one of us here might also be a job seeker in the future. I got my job at IHRP through my podcast. So last year, I decided to reboot my podcast, which I'm still doing today. because lockdown. I bought all this equipment, my microphone and all that for Zoom, but you only have so many Zoom calls. So I decided to put it to good use and rebooted my podcast, and I invited the CEO of IHRP, who is my boss now, to the podcast. And for everything that you try to do, always try to have an ask. So when after he appeared on the podcast, I thanked him for coming on. He bought me lunch, and I told him, by the way, I'm actually looking out for something. If you know anything, let me know. So I did that with probably about 8 to 10 different guests, and a few of them came back with some opportunities here and there. But because I have already somewhat, helped them by getting them to be a guest on my show, all of them really obligated and helped me to put a word out, and an IHRP thing came along first. So that's how I got to be part of the company. So that's the things that I'm doing right now. So very much focus on future of work, HR technology, work tech, as we are gravitating more towards that. And I also recently started my YouTube channel to cover the same topic. I'll be happy to share it in the link later on so everyone can check it out. So enough about me. I'll move on to the report. Now, this report actually started quite some time back. It was supposed to be out April 2020, but due to COVID, it got delayed. And because of the delay, of course, the company that was tasked to complete this report, Willis Tower Watson, also added some extra stuff into it, which didn't extend during the actual coverage of the report, things like COVID-19. So this report came about because IHRP and Ministry of Manpower, we jointly commissioned Willis Tower Watson to really study the impact of technology on HR jobs. Within Singapore, this is the second attempt. The first attempt was actually done by Institute of Banking and Finance. So as the name implies, they do certification for the banking and finance sector in Singapore. And they did a similar survey, but to study the impact of technology on banking jobs. So I guess, when MOM got to know about it, in Singapore term, kiasu lah, scared to lose. So, okay, we should also do something like that. And that's how the whole thing came about. So essentially, it focused on the 3 to 5 year timeline. So 3 to 5 years from now, how would technology, AI, automation change, disrupt, shape the future of the HR sector? Now, why just automation, AI, and all that? Because if you look at future of work, yes, if you ask 10 different people, they'll give you 10 different answers. But my favorite actually come from Deloitte. So according to them, future of work is being shaped by two key things. One, which would be the rise of gig workforce engagement. And two, AI automation infusion into the workplace. Now, gig workforce, to me, there's really so much you can talk about. It's either you engage them, you don't engage them. Simple as that. But AI automation, it really infused and creep into every single aspect of the job. AI is being used to automate bookkeeping, automate chatbots, your customer service agent. AI automation is also being used to replace baristas. In Singapore, there's actually robotic chef, robotic barista. There is a robot that can actually do fried rice in the morning, and at night you can program the chef to do your Western steak for you. Whether it tastes nice or not is secondary, but at least we are at the starting point of something quite awesome. And of course, all this will disrupt people's jobs. And you can imagine if this were to be go mainstream, you wouldn't see any more human baristas in Starbucks. You would just have robotic ones who wouldn't go on strike, who wouldn't have to sleep. Your cafe can be open 24/7. So the impact is really very significant. And in this report, the 6 key things that it's trying to address would be, of course, the technology trends that shape or shaping the HR sector, the ways of working in HR tasks and jobs, some of the evolving HR operating models, which I wouldn't be touching so much on, the future skills that is required on HR professionals, and most importantly, the expectation from HR in the future. So again, very mindful that I want to keep this as short as possible so we can go through a more interesting and interactive discussion. I will jump straight in. So, there are a lot of global trends impacting future of work. You have the industry 4.0, as I mentioned, AI, machine learning. A lot of all this technology are being applied in a combination to really automate a lot of complex and cognitive tasks. I think some of the earlier entrants, of course, would be things like RPA, robotic process automation. But RPA right now is still quite rudimentary. It's essentially teaching a robot how to copy and paste, in my opinion. As we progress, as companies starts to move towards open API, to be honest, do you even need RPA to begin with? RPA right now is really meant to take care of legacy databases or platforms that doesn't have open API yet. So once you have open API, there's no limit in what you can do. And of course, we have the pandemic, which really accelerated a lot of things. It reminded me of what Professor Scott Galloway, a very famous professor in University of New York, mentioned. A lot of things doesn't happen in 10 years. A lot of things doesn't happen in a decade, but a decade can happen in 2 weeks. And this pandemic has really taught us how fast things has evolved and could evolve, because we are forced to compromise. We are forced to restrict ourselves in certain manner. And in Singapore specifically, I am forced not to go out over the past week, and this is going to happen for another 3 more weeks. So because of that, we just have to react accordingly so that we can continue to live on. And of course, this report would center very much on Singapore. So I hope that would not alienate some of the audience here who are from other countries. But I think by and large, it really would be quite a similar or common denominator across different countries. Because every one of us, if we just look internally, we will be able to see that the workforce, the industry transformation is ongoing. Technology infusion will apply. Technology does not discriminate. Aging workforce, there's no discrimination as well. People will grow old, and many countries, with exception to some in Africa, will continue to move towards an aging workforce because of low fertility rates. So in Singapore, our fertility rate, the last I checked, or TFR, stands at 1.19. Replacement rate, by the way, if you're interested, is 2.1. So for many developed countries, we are all in the same boat. So the good thing is, I guess, in Singapore context, the government is very open to supporting the development of future-ready skills, which is why we've created a new step board, not a new one, but been around some time, new relative to many others, called Skills Future Singapore. And they're just focusing very much on skills, developing skills, helping companies to understand how skills can be measured, managed, as well as built into within your workforce. Okay, so let's move on to some of the technology trends that is shaping HR. So there's a few things. The first one would, of course, be intelligent automation. It covers quite a spectrum of solutions, from RPA, which allows for large-scale error-free processing of routine tasks, to AI and machine learning, which are automating complex cognitive processes like CV screening. And of course, the other thing would be the rising expectation of employees for consumer-grade application. Now, what's consumer-grade application? Consumer-grade application is something that we are very familiar with if you happens to be an iPhone or Android users. Essentially, there has been a lot of emphasis from app developers to try to make the app as user intuitive as possible. Meaning to say, you don't have to read through a 200 pages guide. Just open up your iPhone today, a brand new iPhone. When you unbox it, can you find a manual? There's no manual. They no longer provide manual. Why is that the case? Because a lot of emphasis is on how do I make the app so consumer grade that you can pick up, you play around with it, you immediately know how to use it. So that is the thing that a lot of consumer level application already has. Those that do not have, they will lag behind and they will die a natural death. But having said that, at the enterprise level, things are not in sync. In Singapore context, we have a lot of legacy companies that are been around for 20, 30 years, especially in the payroll space, that are still using the old way of processing, the old UI. They may be on .NET framework, etc., which does not really permit that kind of consumer grade experience. So the newer version, or rather the newer companies that's coming into HR tech definitely would have a better advantage as they start from a clean slate. And the third trend will be a shift from basic data analytics toward predictive analytics and modeling. And this is something that we are seeing a lot happening in many different other functions, especially in sales, in accounting, so on. But I think in HR, we are still somewhere in between. We are trying to move towards something beyond just telling us, oh, okay, last month we have so many people, the month before we have that many people, because that is only so useful. To really move towards a predictive analytics with past data, it should be able to help you to understand what can happen in the near future, like how many people might be leaving the company, and among this group of people leaving the company, how many of them might be men, how many might be women, within which demographic. So all this would actually be very much possible. But of course, to make it possible, a lot of things has to be done at the company level to ensure that the data is clean, comprehensive, and allow company to really deep dive into them. So moving on, some of the themes that will transform the way HR will work in the future. So a few of them. One, of course, in terms of job redesign to drive strategic workforce. And of course, the other thing is on equipping workforce with future skills, such as curating learning content, delivering content through tech-enabled platform. And as I mentioned earlier on, to build consumer-grade experience, to help design talent journeys, and to deploy mobile-first application, because every new hire today would be coming from an era that essentially know how to use a phone before they even know how to use a computer or laptop. So you do have to optimize towards that. And of course, to digitalize HR, you really need to rethink the entire delivery model to integrate HR tech infrastructure. And lastly, to develop data architecture so that you can derive people insights. Database decision-making cannot just come just because you are today, okay, from today onwards, I'm going to export all this file into a CSV and look into it. No, it's not that simple. It actually requires a lot more. And one of the key things you have to do is to achieve the single source of truth. But again, given time limitation, I won't be able to touch so much on that. So if it really fascinates you, you can actually find out more by downloading this report and to go through or just reach out to me so I can share more. So very quickly moving forward in terms of job enhancement. So in essence, it's really about job redesign. So HR has to take the lead here to help redesign the jobs that will be necessary. I'll give you an example. In Singapore, Changi Airport, for the longest time, we have a lot of cleaners, blue-collar cleaners. But probably a few years back, the company that was in charge of managing these cleaners decided to deploy semi-autonomous robots, cleaning robots. So robots will be deployed to move around, clean the area, mop up the area, and then go back to charging station. And that would also mean that there will be a lower reliance of manual cleaners, that's one. But again, the other thing is it actually leads to a creation of new jobs because the robots are semi-autonomous. We have not reached the stage where everything will be self-driving right now. So you need to create this new headcount, or you can perhaps upstream your cleaner to better manage this pool of robots. So that is what I mean by job redesign. So HR has to lead the change here. And that means, of course, to be really close to the ground on how your business operates. And that also means that business leaders would really expect HR to play a very proactive role to allow for collaboration and essentially to add better value to the organization. And the next thing is, of course, to equip your workforce with future skills. Now, different organization, different reports may tell a different thing, but I think if you look at this screenshot by WEF, it more or less really cover the nuances and importance of what is required in terms of skill sets: critical thinking, analysis, problem solving, self-management, and active learning, things that robots yet cannot do. So how do you as a HR help your current workforce to be equipped to know how to think critically, to analyze well, to solve problems, to self-manage, especially in today's context where we all have to work from home, as well as to have always lifelong learning mindset. So these are the challenges that HR would have to look at as well. Mentioned earlier on, so I will touch on it, to build consumer-grade experience, something that will help to appeal to the talent journey and also to help onboard them onto what is needed when it comes to all this transaction. Because the last thing you want, honestly, is someone going through spending 20 minutes of their work time just to apply for leave and only for things to screw up and to give HR a call. These are stuff that is no longer accepted as we move into the future. And of course, Digitalise HR. Rita, you mentioned earlier on you're not familiar with the map. So here's a screenshot of how the map looked like. There's a 2020 version. The 2021 version is also available, but that has gone entirely online. So it'll be completely dynamic. You can go to my blog, adriantan.com.sg, and then just search for 2021 market map and you'll be able to find out more. So HR will need to develop integrated HR tech roadmap, and HR can no longer shy away from infusing technology into the company, not expecting you to learn how to code, how to set up architecture, but you do have to understand what you are putting together and to project manage it well. And of course, to drive database decision-making. So this is really highlighted as one of the 5 technologies by both businesses and HR leaders for its impact on human capital related issues. Because for the longest time, when HR make decision, just look at how you typical hire someone. For longest time, it's always, oh, my instinct tell me this person is the right one, or my gut feel says so. It's never data back. And this reminded me of a story that was shared to me by CHRO. At board meetings, when the sales director comes in, he would share about, these are our sales figures, market share, blah, blah, blah. Finance director come in, we share about P&L, we share about our revenue, gross profit margin and all that. HR director turn up, basically just mark attendance, because for the longest time, HR never had any data. So with prevalence of things like Tableau, Power BI, HR right now can indeed put things into a single source of truth, a data depository or data lake, depending on how big your organization is, and to extract all this information in order to ensure any decision that you make moving forward is evidence-backed and not just gut feel. And hopefully with this, we can finally also move away from just aligning ourselves to the most popular decision because it seems to be the safest. Okay, a quick case study by CapitaLand. CapitaLand is one of the largest property developer. So what did they do? So they had to digital transform, and they did it across quite a number of areas. So I'll just focus on HR. So essentially, they did 3 things: paperless HR, automation, as well as smart HR. Now, what does that actually mean? It actually means a few things. One, in terms of paperless HR initiative, they essentially reduce all requirements of printing costs. They implemented an electronic document management system, IBM FileNet. So it allowed them to have a centralized storage of all this digital documentation and save them 100 man days. They also migrated data verification by RPA board, which saved them 900 plus man days, automation of reports, AI chatbot, and also visualization of data in Power BI saved them close to 1,700 hours. Imagine the combination of all these hours. Where can they go to? No, it's not for you to give your employees more time to go onto Instagram, but it really allowed them to invest their time better in other aspects, other value, much more higher value generating aspect of their job. Which obviously would be, as compared to data entry, anything other than data entry seems to be much more higher value. But so this is how you can look at optimization of headcount, which also might mean in the future, your office may not require as many people as before. So next is the impact on technology and HR, on HR tasks and jobs. So the impact based on this report actually covers 27 jobs which was being identified and is ranked across high impact, medium and low impact. So out of which 8 jobs has been identified as being highly impacted by technology. And some of the key common denominator across them is one, it carry a fair bit of transactional and administrative tasks, basically your HR admin. And of course, tasks which are very process driven, I need to do step 1, then step 2, then step 3. All this can actually be automated in the future, as well as someone who is there to do first line support, maybe someone who to handle your HR inquiry line. All this can actually be handled by chatbot as chatbot become more and more intelligent. So some of the example here on RPA automation, which would be things like payroll officer, benefit administrator, learning administrator, very administrative in nature. On the cognitive side, you have your onboarding assistant. This can be done by a bot. Sourcing screening specialist. There's actually a lot of companies, vendor side that can actually do all this for you right now. And of course, your typical assistant. And on the chatbot, of course, your people who are essentially handling all the queries for you right now in the office. But of course, technology works both ways. It will also lead to new opportunities in the form of jobs like HR data analyst, learning designer, employee onboarding strategies, people strategies, so on and so forth. Now, if you think these are, too future, it's just things that I'm throwing out, or Willis Tower Watson is throwing out, it's not realistic. Well, look at what's happening today. These two jobs actually are posted by Accenture Singapore. They're looking for an employee experience transformation senior manager. Look at that title. It's the first time I come across. And the other one is HR talent futurist. So looking at what kind of talent that the company need in 1 to 5 years time, and to help the company prepare for that. Now, having said that, of course, it's by Accenture right now, but I'm very certain all this will eventually trickle downstream, and smaller companies would find it much easier and easier to implement and to consider such roles. So next, what are the technology impact on the future skills for HR professionals? There's quite a number of them, because it really depends on the key functions that this HR person belongs. As we all know, HR functions cut across from talent attraction to learning to ops to BP, TM, etc., so on and so forth. So there are, of course, skills that are functional specific. There are also cross-functional ones. I'll just touch on the cross-functional ones so that it makes more sense to everyone here. So in essence, the 8 key things that HR professionals would really have to think through will be these few things. First, the ability to adopt HR tech. That means you really have to constantly find out what's out there. HR tech will not come to you and tell you, hey, check me out. You have to take a proactive approach to check them out. So there are ways for you to do so. I personally set up a Google Alert to find out anything new, and then I can spend more curated time there. And of course, you can, well, a plug here, you can subscribe to my newsletter or check out my podcast or YouTube channel so that you can get all this information. You have to be able to do people analytics. People analytics, quite similar to the next thing, data-driven storytelling, would require a fair bit of numbers. Now, I do understand for some HR, someone did tell me, if I'm good in numbers, I would have become an accountant, not a HR. But having said that, the reality is numbers will increasingly become very important for HR, in fact, for all functions. And within the HR function, it is something that is really required so that we can move towards an evidence-based decision making. And of course, with all these changes, you can imagine the upheaval within organization, change management. You need to have good relationships with your people to communicate across the necessity of all this change, and to have an agile mindset, because whatever you want to do in today's context, you have to be nimble enough to pivot and to navigate. It's no longer a shock and awe kind of format. It has to be sometimes bottoms up, and you have to make changes to your plan along the way. The understanding or the close inclination between HR as well as business is more and more important. And of course, as we move towards all this, a lot of ethical policy issues will come into play as well. So the next thing will be the impact on technology on HR functions. So for very quickly to run through it. So on the ops and tech side, in terms of architecture of the organizational technology map to enable advanced data analytics. On the employee relations side, to really optimize the talent experience, talent management, learning, etc. Again, you have to better redefine and implement the right processes and technology solution. On the performance bit, again, using technology system to provide real-time information across so they know what is the right amount to pay out, the right benefits to issue. I'll just, again, in consideration of time, I'll skip over a few. HRBP, which would lead to job redesign, strategic planning initiative, as well as OD, which of course will be supported by organizational development services. So there's another case study I'd like to quickly show you here. So which is by Lo and Behold Group, essentially a hospitality group in Singapore. And they implemented an integrated unified cloud-based platform across HR to automate. And because of the time saved, they are able to focus on the next bigger project, which is on predictive analysis to draw linkage to business outcome for talent decisions. So for example, using predictive analytics to identify high flight risk employees and to see how you can redeploy them, better retain them. Because like what is going on most of the time right now, by the time you reach the exit interview, it's too late. You already lost someone. So could data tell us who might be going into that direction? And then HR as well as a company can take reactive measures. So a few key takeaways here in terms of redesign, that will be a key emphasis. Jobs definitely have to be redesigned because the changes that is brought across by Industry 4.0 as well as the rest will not just impact HR functions, it will impact the entire organization. Of course, that also means that people have to be upskilled, reskilled to learn and to unlearn whatever they have been going through so far. And you need to design a better talent experience, because if you don't, your competitors will. So you don't really have a choice here. To really embrace automation, not everything requires a new headcount. There's a fair bit of things that automation can do, and importantly, to leverage analytics so as to gain the right insights and to use data to paint the right picture and for better decision making. So lastly, some of the future evolutions for HR. The human-machine combination. So you can foresee that HR will work closely with governments, academia to ensure right skills are trained, which I guess in Singapore context, we are seeing that a lot in in a lot of businesses, getting information from Skills Future to understand what's a skills framework, to infuse that into their company. Of course, there'll be some ethical dilemmas, especially when it comes to infusion of AI for recruitment. We have seen cases at Amazon as well as some other companies where the AI screening bot actually became racist or even sexist, and they have to take it down and then they restart again. But I think just like a lot of other technology, there will definitely be growing pains, and this would be one of them. But moving forward, as we continue to evolve, it will definitely get better and better. It's just like, when just go back to the first iPhone. The first iPhone don't even have 3G. Cannot even copy and paste if you still remember. So it will take some time for all this evolution to happen. To really look at how to nurture talent, I think one of the key things that a lot of companies have been doing for the longest time is acquire talent. But just think about it this way: if every company out there want to acquire talent, the economics doesn't work. There's only so many supply. So you have to look into training to build your own talent instead of buying your own talent. Some companies are really doing that, like Google, Salesforce, they're really doing that, their own academy. Smaller companies may find it a bit more challenging, but I believe with the right technology partners, with the right vendors, you can definitely make it work. Importantly, you have to embrace the mindset that in today's context, as what Reid Hoffman wrote in his book, in both Startup and Alliance, there is no iron rice bowl job anymore. You cannot expect anyone to join your company and stay there for 10 years. At best, they will stay there for 2 years, and 2 years is good enough. So how do you ensure that within these 2 years, you are able to maximize their output? And that's a key thing about building your talents and to optimize them as much as possible. And of course, with younger people nowadays, it's really about the meaning of job. There are already young people who only look at companies that has heavy emphasis on ESG, environmental, social, and all this stuff. So you have to also take note of all this as work become more purpose-driven rather than just looking at money. Because in today's context, honestly, there's a lot more things young people can do beyond just taking a 9 to 5. Becoming a YouTuber is one of them to make a lot of money. So we, as a company, you have to give an extra reason beyond just the brand name of your company on why young people should consider your company versus anyone else. And lastly, to drive the culture, culture is the key thing in every organization. In fact, it is the unique differentiation. And it is something that is so important that I would think that it has to be the step one before anything else, because without culture, there is no way for you to scale a business. There's two ways for you to run a business. One is to micromanage, but it's not scalable. Or two is to provide a rule book through culture building, and to ensure everyone follow that rulebook as much as possible. And that is really all about driving the right culture. And it's not just getting them to read the culture rulebook and that's it. You have to walk the talk, you have to eat your own dog food. And this is the thing that a lot of businesses find very challenging to do, or they tend to ignore it. But I think this is really where the unique selling proposition of the company comes in, and for HR to really play a larger role in this, because most business owners may not even know where to start. So this will help to create a culture that aligns with the business values and a new way of working. And with that, I hope I give you a great summary on what is this whole study about. Again, if you are interested to find out more, feel free to download this report. You can Google this report. I'll quickly put it into the chat later on. This slide will also be shared with Rita so she can circulate with everyone here. With that, thank you so much, Rita. Over to you. Happy to take any question.
Thank you, Adrian. Wow, we have a lot of takeaways today, right? So now, anybody have any questions? You can either talk. Okay, so you can either write on the chat box, or you can use the mic to tell us about your question. Anybody, any question for Adrian?
Hi, Rita, Jessica here.
Hi, Jessica. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Hi, Adrian. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Adrian. We talk a lot about predictive analytics, and a lot of time it's actually I mean, we use it to analyze turnover and all that. But from your experience, what do most companies use predictive analytics for? I mean, what are the other areas that it can be applied to, apart from like analyzing turnover, the profile of our employees, the social demographics and all that? Thank you.
There are three main key uses when it comes to HR data analytics. One is on talent acquisition. So by knowing where are most of your success cases coming from, for example, if most of your good hires are coming from this university, I'm just using one data point for simplicity, then it makes sense for all future hires to be fixated on people coming from that university. Again, this is a very simplified example, because in most cases, there would be a lot of different data points that the system will be able to take. So that's one. The other two is on talent management. And talent management, it's more on identifying your hypo and all that. But most importantly, as companies continue to evolve and expand horizontally their business line, you will imagine a lot of cases, okay, I got this new project. Who do I assign to that project? Based on what matrix do I assign this group of people into that project versus another group of people. So when you have data surrounding skills taxonomy based on their portfolio, based on what they have done before, etc., it will help you to easily put together a team, a strike team, to take on new projects with a higher likelihood of success. And that means, of course, before that, you need to curate the skills taxonomy and all that. And lastly, is really on Com and Ben. Com and Ben is more so in terms of doing a lot of simulation, but it also, of course, as we move forward, you can imagine a state where you're able to get readily available information, which allows you to provide better offer management as well as retention management. What do I mean by that? Right now, in most companies, whenever they want to do salary benchmarking, what do? They go Mercer, Aon, pay 6-figure, get this static book, which you can only use 1 year, and then next year pay another 6-figure to Aon and a Mercer. But there are already companies nowadays, companies like Salary Board. You may also have heard of companies like PayScale and all that. They are already curating all this data, and they're constantly refining them and updating them in real time. So imagine with access to those data, you can actually react very quickly to what is required, especially when you make a certain offer to an individual, especially if the role is entirely new. You know, when it comes to a new, let's say your company suddenly need to hire an AI scientist. You have never hired an AI scientist. How much to pay? What kind of package and all that, you won't have a clue. So with a lot of data, especially external secondary data, that would also be another possibility.
Wow, that's a great tip.
Got it. Thank you so much. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you, Adrian. I think it's a great tip that nowadays for HR, this is how we get the Com and Ben information, just to pay the consultancy company, right? for the data for 1 year, and then next year we have to do it again. So here comes a question from Eddie. Thanks for sharing. This was just awesome. How important is employee engagement in the future of HR, and where does this fit into in your list of 8 cross-functional skills that HR professionals should have?
The employee engagement, even without looking at the future of HR, is something extremely, extremely important, because when it comes to any form of change management, you need buy-in, and buy-in cannot happen on demand. So you cannot expect, okay, we want to change something, let's just press this button and then everyone will have buy-in. So it takes a lot of time, and that is done through engagement, through your regular pulse survey, your Friday check-in, for example. So all this will be micro steps for you to build up that goodwill. You know, it's like for many of us here who might be parents, you don't just disappear on your kids and 30 years down the road expect them to take care of you. It's not going to happen. They may at best help you find a nursing home and keep you there. So you need to ensure every week you bring them out, you know, bonding with them, listen to their nonsense, which I constantly do. I have 4 kids here. But these are things you have to do. These are the engagement stuff you have to do, whether you like it or not. Hopefully you like it. So it is extremely important. With no buy-in, none of what we have said here would be possible at all.
Okay.
Thanks, Adrian.
Yeah, thank you, Adrian. So, Adrian, when we talk about future of HR, right, is all related to technology, AI, automation, upskilling, reskilling, and so forth. And as an SME, with limited resources, how do we prepare for that? How can we tell our boss that, oh, this is the future HR and we have to spend money on that? What's the right approach to do that?
I had this conversation with a group of charities in Singapore. Most charities in Singapore are also SME by definition. But for them, it's even harder for them to consider any spent on HR tech because they are handling donors' money. So you really have to make a convincing case. And I always feel that, okay, your first baby step is not to try and transform or to improve the company, it's to improve the individual. So at the individual level, what are some of the work tech that you can easily implement to help reduce the burden of work, especially administrative work? So some of the things that I constantly and commonly will recommend will be things like, just look at how we usually schedule appointments. Yeah, Rita, if today I want to schedule an appointment with you, I will tell you, okay, how about tomorrow, 3 o'clock? Then you email back, tomorrow, 3 o'clock cannot. How about Monday, 4 o'clock? And then I'll come back to you, oh, Monday, 4 o'clock cannot. How about Tuesday, 10 o'clock? And this email ping pong would just waste 30 minutes of our time. There are actually available technology out there that allow me to integrate with my calendar to give you a public URL. You just go in, pick the date, boom, done. So that immediately saves us 30 minutes of our time. Compound that 30 minutes over the number of instances you have to schedule meeting, multiply by the number of people you have in your company that need to schedule meetings, you can imagine the amount of time spent. And this is just on calendaring. There are also free applications that allow you to automate follow-ups. There's also free application for you to do a lot of things like putting a deck together. For example, I just put that up on my LinkedIn, by the way. So there's really a lot of things that one can do. So I do suggest to go into that because if you want to do a big bang way, even if you have the budget to do so, chances are buy-in, people may be skeptical. And if they're skeptical, okay, they may listen to you on your onboarding and all that, but then you'll be missing out the most important thing, which is adoption. And without adoption, whatever you just bought become a white elephant. And once you have a white elephant, the next time you try to go back to your management, everyone will remind you of that first white elephant and things will never move. Yeah, and I'd like to share this story. I spoke with a bank in Singapore, a private bank, and the HR department did this thing. So for the longest time, they did their performance review, pen and paper style, old school style. And every year they have to collate, harmonize, and data entry, all this. They have close to 2,000 employees. 2,000 pieces of paper. So they were quite frustrated. So they're like, okay, screw it, let's digitize this. Let's just give everyone a form, a digital form, and then only with radio buttons. So nothing to harmonize, everything. It makes sense, from a process optimization standpoint. But after the exercise, they realized they still receive like 500 to 700 pieces of paper. And the reason is because people have things to say. Your radio buttons does not allow me to say the things that I want to say. And since it's once a year, I do have things to say. I want you to listen. And not just that, a lot of people were very unhappy about the whole experience, because the 500 to 700 are people who are, maybe daring enough or extroverted enough to make a difference, but you always have the silent majority, people who are angry but decide to not say anything. They will say something by showing you the resignation letter. So the whole thing, they had to U-turn on the whole thing. They went back to pen and paper. And the next time they thought, okay, we are ready to implement performance management, they have to hold it first, because the senior management again reminded them of what happened. They need to go through a cooling down phase for people to forget what happened before they can implement something. So you can imagine how challenging it is if you don't have the buy-in to begin with. So do things at a micro level first. Try to see how you can fix individual problems before you try to attempt to fix everybody's problem, especially your boss's problem.
Very good advice. Micro level first. Do something small first, right? Before we can do something big. So we have a question for Adrian here. But Azul, right? This is an excellent knowledge sharing. Thanks. My question is, how can we redesign competency models after pandemic? What can be the significant changes?
I think the key thing that pandemic has taught us is the importance of self-management. That will be one of the key things, as we are all forced and suddenly thrown to work in our own bedroom, dining table, or whatever you have. We realize that many of us may actually not have the discipline, because our TV is just right in front. My Netflix account is calling out for me. It's very hard to focus, especially if you're not trained in that. And many companies don't even think about it. They will expect employees to have the ability to do so, to suddenly have that mental switch, and things will just happen automatically, which is why you may have heard of some horror stories, where I personally have heard of a few, where employees are expected to go into a WhatsApp group every day, 8:30, just to wish each other good morning. It's an indication for the manager that everyone has woke up. And meetings are deliberately organized just before and after lunchtime, so that you cannot do long lunches. Now, these are the better ones. The worst one I've heard is, for every day, Monday to Friday, 9 to 6, you have to be on Zoom and you have to turn on your camera. And their rationale is, this will help people to feel more connected with each other, even though we are working, in a decentralized manner. It's entirely bullshit. It's basically, you want to monitor your people because you are not a good people manager. Because the old way of managing people is based on time spent. What time you come into office, what time you leave, how many toilet breaks you have taken. Very factory-like. But in a decentralized remote workspace, it's not possible. It's all about outcome. So if I'm a marketing person and my KPI this week is to write 5 blog posts, if I've already done that, don't care how this person spend his time. He can spend 1 hour churning out the 5 blog posts, 7 hours watching Netflix. It's fine. KPI already met. So back to self-management, I think that's one of the key things that company has to cater for. And looking at how this pandemic has evolved, we don't really know when it will end. We thought it would be just as short as SARS. At least I thought it would be as short as SARS. Because of that, at the 6-month mark, I actually bought shares in Genting, which manages cruises. One of the cruise ships is actually in Hong Kong. The stock is still down because nobody is traveling. Because I foolishly thought that this COVID-19 situation will finish in 6 months, just like SARS. So the ability to really be a bit more agile, which I guess is something that a lot of startup would expect in their people, in the way they work. All this will have to be infused into your traditional business. You really have to need to have your contingency right. So at the individual level, really to have much better planning, analysis, and not just go by the book, because the by the book way does not address what COVID-19 will do. The by the book way will not tell you what to do when suddenly the place that you're staying become a COVID-19 cluster. So all these are things that you have to teach people, especially if they don't already have the skill set, and it has to be done in an evolving manner. So when it comes to acquiring people, when you try to map out all this, you need to know that whether they are short of these skill sets and to teach them. So that's one thing. But the other thing is you cannot improve what you don't measure. So how do you measure skill set? For the longest time, it has been quite impossible. You just based on, okay, this person graduated with a diploma degree from this university, and naturally, I would conclude that this person has certain skill sets of competency. But that is one, if you are to prioritize just on academic qualification. If you have to do it, fine. If you have to Google Accenture, no problem. Uni grads will always gravitate to you. But if you're an SME, you cannot outcompete Google. So what do? You have to look at other kind of people which may not have the university degree or master or PhD, but they have the skill set. Yeah. So you have to identify what is their skill sets. You have to validate their skill set. And importantly, once you have mapped out their skill set, how do you continue to upskill their skill set within an organization? So there are platforms right now in the market like Gloat, Degree, JobCred, etc., which allows you to map out the entire skills taxonomy within your organization to tell you very quickly, okay, you as a marketing person, you have this 10 skill set. If you want to become a senior marketing person, these are the 3 skill set that you're missing. And for each of these skill set, you can either go through our LMS, you can go to this podcast, you can go to this event, you can talk to this person, so on and so forth, in order to clock your skill set. So this will also evolve to, this will also lead into another aspect where training is done in a more individualized manner, where there is an individual career pathway, rather than our typical public school system, one size fit all, which of course will definitely not fit everyone. So it's quite a long way to answer your question, but I think those are the things that will definitely have HR have to really take into consideration to look at how to redesign all these competency models and look at all these significant changes.
Thank you, Adrian. I particularly like on what you just mentioned about individualized training, right? We cannot have one model or one training which can fit everybody. Especially you talk about identifying, validating, or upskilling one's capability. Okay, so we have another question here. How can we hire potential candidates in this pandemic situation where candidates are afraid to change jobs? Most of the people want to stay in the same company, and management don't want to increase cost, I mean the replacement cost. So when it comes to talent acquisition, what is your advice?
I'm not exactly agreeable with the first sentence where candidates are afraid to change job. Well, I guess afraid in what sense? Because if based on a very recent report by Microsoft, again, sample size may not be relevant to your home country. 47% of the people they surveyed want to change job this year. Yeah, so that's already happening. And when it comes to changing job, it's really just about putting yourself out there, going through the interview. End of the day, you still can say no. And in fact, there was a period of time, at least in Singapore, we thought we are going to relax on certain regulation, and I was supposed to go back to office. Many people do not want to go back to office because they have become so domesticated at home. And that really riled up a lot of people in, okay, I want to change job. I want to look at a job where remote is the norm, not just an exception. So I think, and again, based on anecdotal examples, based on surveys, in fact, at least in Singapore, many people are open to changing jobs. Maybe because Singapore is so small, it really does not matter. And most people want to stay in the same company. Again, I don't really agree with that, especially for younger people. If you look at the trending, even in a country like Japan, younger people are no longer as loyal as before. The traditional Japanese will stay in the job for life. But in today's context, not just even a company themselves is unable to give you the assurance. Even Toyota is unable to give you the assurance that I can hire you for life. So people has to really look out for themselves. And in looking out for themselves means you always have to open yourself for opportunities. And with the rising increase in gig workforce, there's also another thing which is coming in, which is your sideline. So I know for the longest time, many companies may frown upon individuals having moonlighting and all that stuff. But for many companies, they are becoming more and more enlightened. For example, CapitaLand, the same company I mentioned earlier on, they were exploring a platform to help their people present other skill sets that they have. So I'll give you an example. So let's say I'm the IT engineer. But I am interested and pretty good with photography or videography. So when it comes to, say, the annual dinner and dance and all that, instead of HR department or the D&D committee look for a freelancer or an agency to do it, they can go into this platform to find out which employees are good in this and to engage the employee instead. So the employee could continue to perform his main job, but at the same time able to perform and also to present his other interest and put it into practice. Yeah, so a lot of companies is really actually going into that space. And of course, you know, with all this, I really think that the situation will be quite challenging for companies to, of course, hire people because people are just, you know, there's no more loyalty, which means to say you really have to put in a lot more effort in trying to retain them and to train them, and also to create the differentiation through your culture. People will not leave a business just because, oh, company B is paying me $100 more. There's really a lot of change cost involved. Just for culture, just for certain perks, for example. I'll give you an example. Pre-pandemic, when I was in an outplacement business, I had a staff, she joined a business, she became pregnant, and because of that, she has this idea that, oh, I just want to work 4 days a week. Wednesday, I want to take off to take care of my kid. And because it's a small business, the business said, yeah, no problem. And again, this is pre-pandemic, and she has been with the company for 3 years plus. Every time, you know, things happen at work, she had a bad day, she'd be like, okay, I want to leave. But where else can I find a 4-day work week? And she would just, okay, actually the company is not bad, you know, let me stop complaining, and she just hang on there. So all this unique proposition would be something that each individual company has to think about. There's no common playbook you can take reference from. It's really identifying what you can provide above and beyond what Google Essential can provide.
Very good. I particularly like your story about the CapitaLand, right? They particularly have a platform whereby the employees can showcase their another type of skills. So here comes the last question before we take a group picture, okay? So a question from Asmita. During this pandemic situation, what should we do as an organization in order to improve our employee value proposition, EVP? Adrian.
Okay, if you talk about EVP, of course, EVP will appeal to two groups of people. One would be people you want to hire. The other one will be people within the organization. So let's talk about the people that you want to hire first. And this is something that many businesses have overlooked because they think, oh, by default, people will know. This is what they call the curse of knowledge. And I'll give you an example. If you look at Indeed, which is a job aggregator, they bring in job posts and all that. Over this pandemic period, there was only a 6% increase in the number of jobs that mentioned the word remote in the job posting. Yeah, many other jobs isn't doing so. But think about it, 100% of the companies in Singapore are actually encouraged to work remote. So why is there only 6% increase? Or rather 6% of the job that mention the word remote? So many companies just take it for granted that people would know that we are in hybrid and all that. No. People don't know. People want to know the differentiation. You need to mention it in your job post that this job is going to be hybrid, going to be remote, going to be 4-day work week, etc. People want to know, especially when this kind of matters hinges on the fact whether they want to take on a job or not. It's no longer about which company give you the highest mobile phone allowance, number of leaves. No, no, no. All this doesn't matter. When you are working remotely, your leave doesn't matter anymore because you can take care of things at home. So these are things that company firstly would have to do. And of course, second, for the longest time when it comes to EVP, is really to showcase your operations to other people. And this could be done through videos, especially videos, I would say. I would say primarily videos, to interview your people, get them to do some social proof on what you like about the business, etc., and to showcase what you are doing for your people. So for example, my wife, she works in a startup, and they before pandemic, they always have this every Friday, Singapore, every first Friday of the month, Singapore office will come together, go for a big group dinner, drinking session and all that, or a big group lunch, sorry. Of course, when pandemic happened, it couldn't take off. And what they did instead was they ordered food delivery for everyone. So 12 o'clock, when it's lunchtime, everyone will hop into Zoom and they can still try to replicate things virtually. Yeah, so this is one way for you to improve your EVP. But again, you don't just stop there. There's opportunity for you to, like Rita, what you're going to do later on, to take a picture. Why are you taking a picture? Because social proof. You want to put on Facebook, you want to show off to the world, hey, AsiaHRM is doing this kind of thing. Same thing. If you're already spending money to send food to employees, take a picture, show off as much as you can to let people know that, hey, Company A is doing this. You should join Company A. If you're with Company A, every first Friday of the month, we send you free food. We talk, we just chit chat and mingle with each other. So again, these are things that company may tend to overlook because I would say for the longest time, marketing is not exactly something that HR would do. Again, if you're good in marketing, you would have become a marketer. You wouldn't have joined HR. But unfortunately, the reality is for all future function, it would be multidiscipline. Even a marketing person has to be involved in a bit of, even for a marketing role, you have to go a lot deeper. Right now, you have things like performance marketing, where you really analyze the metrics, conversion, what's the open rate, click rate, A/B testing, and all that. Unlike 10, 20 years ago, you just, oh, my gut feel tell me this flyer looks nicer versus that flyer. It's no longer the case. So every function has to evolve, whether you like it or not. So likewise for EVP, for employee value proposition, all this kind of stuff, you do have to put on your marketing hat and to always be mindful of it. Anything, any interaction, anything that your people say positively can be an evidence for you to show off to the world. Show it off.
Thank you, Adrian, for reminding me that for AsiaHRM, we have to work on our EVP, right? By taking a group picture so that we can put on a social media saying that, oh, from every now and then, we organize sessions like this with great speakers from any countries in Asia to share with us their expertise and knowledge. Okay, so, and at the same time, we also want to invite everybody to be our member. Some of you might know that we have recently implemented a membership tier system. And for some of you have joined it, for some haven't joined it. So after this session, we'll send you an email on that or a message on that so that you can join us, hoping that you will carry on supporting us and then joining the sessions like this so that we can learn from the best. So before we close the session, I got a question from your fan, Adrian, about IPHP. It's also my friend Adeline. She was asking if there will be any conference for IHRP in 2021.
We are exploring. Of course, to be honest, conference events and all this, it does not really work well in a virtual setting. I've been involved in too many to know that it really doesn't work well, especially if I were to do it during a weekday. I'm quite surprised that because it's a weekend today, but still we can get a fair bit of engagement. But when you do it on weekday, people are just listening, they minimize the window, they continue to work, they go off, things like that. It's just me talking to myself or me talking to the wall. So I'm not really sure. We were thinking of doing something with Ernst & Young, a physical event in July. That was before this new lockdown, but we have to KIV that for now. But definitely we'll be keen to do something at a bigger scale to really get to build our community in a much more fluid and dynamic manner. But in the meanwhile, we are also exploring things that we can try to bring people together using technology. Since we are advocating technology, we have to eat our own dog food. We have to leverage on technology as well. So while we sort that out, feel free to find out what we do and be part of the community. So once all these new measures and things are put in place, you'll be the first one to be able to use them.
Okay, so maybe you ever mentioned that how we can connect with you. Maybe you don't mind just tell us one more time how we can be connected with you.
Sure. So there's a number of ways. So I have quite a number of channels. So for all of you here, if you have LinkedIn, you can just go to LinkedIn and search for Adrian Tan. You should be able to find me. Feel free to drop me a connection there. And of course, I have my blog. I put it in the chat earlier on. Just scroll up. You should be able to find it. My blog, the newsletter subscription box. I think the newsletter will be the best passive way for you to get alerted of new stuff. I have my podcast as well. And also, I've recently created my YouTube channel. I actually have a lot of backlog of video, but I'm on this super slow computer, which makes post-production very, very painful. I will try to do some post-production. I already have like 3 or 4 videos that I want to put together. So just, subscribe to that as well, and you get all the latest information.
Thank you, Adrian, for such a wonderful session today. I can't thank you more. And if no other questions from the floor, we'll just close the session today and have a very nice weekend. Thanks, everybody. Thanks. Bye-bye.